All right, so you guys should have heard a little lady telling you that the recording was in progress. All right, so there we've got a few more folks who were having a little trouble, so. All right. Again, Emily Cleathorm is president of Zonta Club of Jefferson City, and this event is going to raise funds for Zonta International, which I think there are many of you who are members of Zonta Club of Jefferson City. I appreciate you participating this evening. We may have a few folks that are new and may want a little bit of information about Zonta. We are a women's organization that is international. We're in 66 countries, over 28,000 members, give or take a few. And basically what we do is we work to improve the lives of women through service and advocacy. I know they recently changed our tagline to making the world a better place for women and girls. But I do still believe that we do that through service and advocacy. So wanted to point that out as well. Really appreciate everybody taking a few minutes out of their day to enjoy some wine and charcuterie and learn about wine. We have a wonderful lady who's going to share her knowledge with us, Moray Brelin, and that is, she will be presenting. I'll turn it over to her, and then I will share a screen that is her presentation for us all. At certain points during the presentation, we will stop and allow folks to have ask the questions if they'd like. If you are familiar with Zoom and want to put your questions in the chat, I'll be watching that as well. So I will turn it over to Brelin for a moment, and then you can just let me know when you'd like me to share your presentation.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Emily. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. I'm so excited. This is my first tasting where I'm hosting someone else's wine. So that was really fun for me to reach out to all of the different producers and chat with them about what they have going on. One of them was actually really easy. The OBR, it's Scott Bilbrough. I was able to just send him a text and say, hey, give me some info on your OBR because I'm going to be drinking it. And so he sent a really cute little story that I'm excited to share with you when we get to talking about the Zinfandel. So just real quick, you have some wines. I know that we all had different packages and order different things. So I don't want you to feel as if you need to wait to start drinking. I would never make you wait. And to jump around, though, I do suggest that if you start with, or if you were planning on drinking the Moscato, to save that until the end, because those are both sweet wines. So I'm starting with the Sancerre, but we'll get to that a little bit later. And yeah, cheers, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I know that the charcuterie trays are going to pair beautifully with all of the different wines that we have. It's rather versatile, and so I hope that you enjoy it.
All right, so I will go
so Emily, if you want to start, and then you can move on to the second slide. So I know that we're after hours, so don't think that I'm trying to talk to you about board meetings and pie graphs and things of that sort, but I'm a reader, so I like to be able to see things on a screen. It kind of helps me follow along, but I'm also trying to not read off of the slide as well. So, but I just wanted to tell you a little bit about who I am, because you've probably never heard of me. I've been in the industry for 10 years, though. I've just been talking about other people other than myself. So it's been a wild ride this past year. In 2021, I started my inaugural vintage of Pinot Noir with my namesake wine called Moray Brelin. I'm California born and raised, so that's why you'll see the poppies on my labels. Although I do have one or two labels coming up, you'll hear about them soon, that have my pets on the labels, because I'm an animal lover. And you know, you get the question, what are you, a cat or a dog person, and I'm just like, why choose? They're both great for their own timings. Cats on their timing, but you know, we have fun with them both. So anyway, I have been in the industry for 10 years. I started in the tasting room at Silver Oak Cellars. They are a Cabernet house based out of Napa Valley and Alexander Valley here in California. And they have a sister winery called Toomey Cellars, and that's focused on Pinot Noir. And so I started in the tasting room there. I thought that I knew about wine because I can swirl it without spilling and properly pronounce Cabernet Sauvignon. But then when I started actually surrounding myself with people who were talking about wine, I realized that there's so much more to the industry. And by then I drank the juice. And so I went to school in the evenings. I interned at the San Francisco Chronicle wine competition. I read all the publications, and then I started doing this thing that's it's like secret shopping here in the Valley at tasting rooms. I go in, I'm not industry, I'm not local, and then I get to try the wines and pretty much drink wine and judge people and see how they did, sharing the brand story and the club membership. So I've had quite the exposure to these two valleys. I probably mystery shopped over 150 of them or so. And so it's been really exciting for me to be here in Sonoma County where so much action is happening. It's been a really great learning experience. And so after Silver Oak, I went to Costa Brown, learned about Pinot Noir from that group of guys. That was a lot of fun. And then I went to Hall Wines and Martinelli. As you can see, I did a brief resume bullet points there. It's been really interesting. And I was on a podcast the other day, and someone was like, it's just crazy. Like 10 years ago, you're an on-call tasting room host, and now you're a GM and a winemaker and an owner. Like, that's amazing. And well, I guess when you put it like that, but you just wake up and you put your pants on one leg at a time, and then the next thing you're doing bigger and better things. And I look back and think about it, and it's because of so many people who focused on empowering me and encouraging me to go beyond and do more and gave me opportunities to say yes. So being able to partner with Zonta is just I feel like it goes so well because my career has been women empowering me and helping me and encouraging me. And as a minority, as I'm Mexican, as a female, and as a millennial, there are so many interesting paths and avenues and the culture around all three of those aspects, those characteristics of me have been really interesting. And so just pairing with Zonta is really, really special for me. So thank you for joining me. So outside of wine, I love to golf, if you can't tell. Traveling and going and playing golf is a lot of fun for me. I've actually golfed over in St. Louis at the Bellerive Country Club when it was a warm 40 degrees. And I say warm because the sun was out. Otherwise, well, I probably still would have played, but maybe not as well. But it was a lot of fun, beautiful course, and look forward to getting out to Missouri actually in February. In St. Louis and Kansas City, we have a couple of different events that are going to be coming up. So I hope to see you all there in person if you're around and available. And I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure how far Jefferson City is from St. Louis or Kansas City, but I hope it's not too far and we'll be able to see you. Emily, next slide. So I wanted to talk about the Moscato first, even though I told you not to drink it yet, because honestly, I don't think we'll really get to it too much. So I just wanted to touch it real quick. The flavors there. So the Moscato, it's a Muscat grape, and it's generally a white grape. Although there's different varietals and ways to kind of play around with that. There's orange wine that you have some muscats, but generally it's lower alcohol and has a little bit more residual sugar. So it has a little bit of sweetness that comes with it. And that makes it pair really well with spicy foods because it helps tone that spice down because of that low alcohol. So I know that, we all love to pair food with wine. So I'm going to try to trickle that in throughout my talk with y'all. But for me, I mean, there's so much that's palate specific, like you specific. I mean, I don't like mushrooms or shrimp, and you might eat mushrooms and shrimp every day and just love it so much. And so for me to say, if you pair, this cheese with this wine, it's just going to sing in your mouth. I mean, I can't take claim to that, but we can give you pointers because there is some science behind it. I mean, the big tannins in Cabernets and Syrahs aren't going to go well with those spicy foods because of, the science of it. And I'm not going to pretend to know it word for word. I was actually a psychology major. I was, before I started in wine, I was the teen center director for the city of Davis, and then moved to Sonoma County to run the teen center for the Boys and Girls Club. And then realized I didn't want to work with teens the rest of my life, and that drinking wine was a lot more fun. And so went and started working in the industry from there. But there's a lot of things that you can learn, obviously, not just from books. But yeah, so the Moscato, there's two of them. There's this one, Salt of the Earth, and that's the one I'm highlighting because it's actually from the valley is the highlighted orange, but that pink arrow is pointing to Stanislaus County. And inside Stanislaus County is this little tiny town called Patterson. And that's where I grew up. There was about 10,000 people there when I was growing up, one stoplight. And I was about 16 when they got a McDonald's. And there was a line for 2 weeks for the McDonald's because everyone was just so excited they didn't have to drive to the big city Modesto for their McDonald's anymore. But so yeah, I like to see it as humble beginnings, growing up in orchards. And yeah, so I just love that wine was from there and figured that was a fun tie-in. 2-hour drive. Gotcha. Well, that's not too far for Jefferson City is about 2 hours from St. Louis or Kansas City. I got a chat. Sorry, I got distracted. Squirrel. So we can go to the next slide, Emily.
Are there any
Oh,
questions
sure.
about the Moscato? Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask Marae about the Moscato wine? And while we have folks thinking of if they have any questions, I'm going to take an opportunity, and let me know if you can see this. I'm going to take an opportunity to thank some of our Vintner Reserve sponsors. If everybody can see that. Everybody's enjoying some wonderful charcuterie from Amazing Grace, and thank them very much. They did a wonderful job on that. Barvino, who is helping sponsor this and helped us find Moray. Matt Green out there did a wonderful job with that. And Rusty Brewing Chevrolet. If you're looking for a new vehicle, I would suggest you go out there. They've been very supportive of our mission in Zonta. So has anybody, while I've been thanking some of our sponsors here, has anybody come up with questions for Moray? And it's fine if you don't, because that just means you're enjoying the wine and you're enjoying the charcuterie. So, all right. I will, looks like we have one more person in the waiting room.
Yeah, and also just Emily, as you're moving that, but fun fact, the Salt of the Earth isn't available. Like if you try to go on their website and buy it, it's not for sale. And so going through Barvino is the only way. So if you got that and you enjoy it, then go back to Barvino because it won't be available. I love that. I love the businesses supporting all the others and selling out of wine. That's always fun.
Okay. I don't see any other questions, so I'll move forward to the next slide.
Yeah. So this is the Sancerre, and this is what I'm drinking, and it has a nice lemongrass crisp characteristic to it. I think it's a really nice wine. So Sancerre is it's Sauvignon Blanc. It's the Sauvignon Blanc grape that you're drinking. But the way that the French label things is via region, not varietal, like we do here in the States. When you're trying to buy a wine, you go to the store and you ask for a Cabernet Sauvignon or a Zinfandel. Where over in France, you would say a Sancerre for a Sauvignon Blanc, or you would say like a white Burgundy, which would be a Chardonnay, and it's designated based off of the growing region. And then those varietals are specifically grown in that area. So for a Burgundy, it's a white Burgundy, which is Chardonnay, and then a red Burgundy is Pinot Noir, which is, again, like I said, different than what we do here. Because in Napa Valley, you have Merlot planted, you have, I mean, they have Merlot there too, but you have, you're able to just designate it as 100% and Merlot. It's really interesting, the different countries and how everyone regulates their alcohol, how the United States regulates their alcohol as this whole web of drama. I'll spare you with that joy of the winemaking side of things. But so the Sauvignon Blanc comes from the Loire Valley over in France, and it has good acidity. So with that kind of acidity, you want to pair other acidic things, which is kind of surprising. You would think that would amplify it, but between the food and the wine, they blend together really well. And so that's our kind of rule of thumb for pairing higher acid wines. And one thing that I have going on for me, so with my label, Marie Brelin, I started with 4 tons of Pinot Noir from the Russian River Valley. But then as things have evolved and I've grown and I've gotten some good scores and sold out of my rosé, I was able to grow. And one of the ways that I'm doing that is I'm starting with a Muscadel wine. And so Muscadel is also similar to Sauvignon Blanc. Sauvignon Blanc, Semillon, and Muscadel are more the wines that the whites that you'll find planted in Bordeaux. And so this wine is going to go, this Muscadel that I'm getting, it's 3 barrels. So it comes out to about 75 cases or so, not a lot of wine. But this wine goes into this program that I have, that I mentioned earlier with the dog and cat on my labels. So here on the screen, you have my kitty Simba, and he's next to his label that's a Muscadel, and it's called Stray Cats. And then I also have my stray dogs here. And so that's my dog Stout, and that's Simba. And then the idea with these wines, so I'm also the general manager for 2 small wineries here in Sonoma County, based out of Santa Rosa, and it's Pinot Noir based. It's called Clarice and Beaumarchais. Beaumarchais was in one of the packs that you had the opportunity to order. And so as GM of these 2 labels, we blend our 3 wines, and then sometimes after blending a wine, just all the barrels might not make that final blend for various reasons. I mean, it could be it could be quantity. It could be you're going for a certain style, and for some reason that wine, even though it tastes good, it doesn't fit with those other barrels. And so then we take those stray barrels from Clarice, Beaumarchais, and Marie Brelin, and some clients that we have, and then we blend this wine called Stray Dogs or Stray Cats. And with that, we take 10% of the profits and we donate to animal shelters. I've actually donated to an animal, or the Humane Society in in Kansas City, because they picked up some of my stray dogs. And so that is my wine that I'm able to use to give back. And I was also, I mean, because I'm the owner, I can do what I want. And so I would love to donate to Zonta for the month of December for all of the stray dog sales that we have go on. So we can talk about how to order online, but if you use the code Zonta in the checkout, then you'll get 15% off of my wine, of the stray dogs. And then I'll donate that 10% instead of to the Humane Society to Zonta for the month of December. So I hope that helps continue to improve and add to the programs that Zonta has going on, and to continue empowering women to pursue and dream. Next slide, or any questions?
Wow, I think that's amazing. Thank you for offering that up. Does anybody have any questions for Marae? And please, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yeah,
Okay.
Moray.
Marae, all right.
Sherry has a question.
Okay, let me make sure she's unmuted. I'm trying to unmute her. Sherry Doctorian does.
It is in the message, but I think it's just
Oh.
asking about.
Yes, I do. I just
Okay,
looked at the chat.
good.
Thanks.
So the question, I can read it from the chat. It's what's the difference between the New Zealand and US Sauvignon Blanc wines and the French Sancerres? Is it how Sauvignon Blanc grapes are handled, processed, or the soil they are grown in? I think that's a great question. I love the New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs. They taste similar to this one with that grassy characteristic. But the soil, it's the terroir, to my knowledge, and I haven't explored very deeply, but from my time in the industry, the clones are very similar, if not the same. There's over 3,000 different varietal clones, and over 5,000 different varietals, and then they all have their clones. So a clone is pretty much like a flavor, like you take an Oreo and then you can have the double stuffed, or you can have the orange cream, or or the peppermint. And so it's still an Oreo. And so your varietal, you still have a Sauvignon Blanc, but the clone has a little nuance that makes it a little different. So with my Pinot, I get the 115 clone and the 114, and the 114 ripens, and they're right next to each other, about 10 feet apart as the tractor row goes, and the 114 ripens later, but then I pick it the same time that I pick my 115, and it's also a little smaller, a little tighter cluster. So it's different like that. But the soil is definitely what's going to be the biggest characteristic, because I mean, the processing, that you can't get too creative with. You bring the wine in, you crush it into the tank, and you press it, and then you put it into barrel or to a tank to ferment. That's a fairly standard Sauvignon Blanc processing process system. But it's going to be the soil that's different, because the winemakers, everybody has their fingerprints on it, and you can take two pieces of the acre of the vineyard and give it to one winemaker, and they could put new oak on it and give it to another winemaker of that same fruit from the same vineyard, and they could put it into stainless steel tanks, and then when you try it, they're going to be two completely different wines. So it's definitely going to be the French word terroir. It's just the environment that grape is grown in, the soil, the sunshine, the clone, the angle that the vines are set in. Is that, getting more sun side on this way, and if you had it at a different angle, how does that sun, as it sets during the ripening season, how does it affect that row? So I mean, you can get very geeky and scientific about it. And so, but that's the terroir, and that's what's going to make the vine and the fruit be what it is. So that I would say is the biggest difference between the New Zealand and US and Sancerre. And personally, I love Russian River Sauvignon Blanc and Napa Valley too, but it's one of my dreams to make a New Zealand Pinot Noir, because I just love New Zealand. It's such a beautiful area down there, and so hashtag bucket list. Thank you for asking, Sherry.
Yes,
Thank you. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you. I'm a fan of Kim Crawford.
Yeah,
That's the
absolutely.
one. That's my favorite. But I wrote down Russian Valley because I like to try new ones. And I like Sancerres. I like Sancerres a lot, but they're different. So I just wasn't sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, the soil can, make them seem more flinty to some, where some soils give it a little bit more of a roundedness. It's soil's an impressive thing. I mean, you can spend a lifetime or two researching all the different soils and grape types. It's really interesting.
Thank you.
All right, so while other folks may be thinking of questions for Moray, did somebody else have a question?
I have a question.
Okay.
Yeah.
We toured the Willamette Valley this summer,
Mhm.
and we're told that they're really having trouble because climate change is causing warmer temperatures, and that they're not going to be able to continue growing Pinot Noir grapes forever. What is being done or might be done to make to grow that stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. And something that we're all asking ourselves. So if you have some ideas, we'd love to hear them. No, actually, so I mean, there's, it's like, what can everybody do? I mean, there's something everywhere and in every kind of aspect. I mean, we see that there's an issue. I mean, here in California, we're going through a drought. And so we think that drought so to get a little geeky, so with the lack of rain, there's salt that just kind of builds up around the roots of the vine. And with the lack of rain, we don't think the salts really absorbed or dissolved enough. And so then when we would water, it kind of created this barrier it created this barrier to keep the water from really absorbing into the soil. So then when it comes harvest time, we're struggling with fermentation because it's lacking some micronutrients that we weren't aware that it was lacking through our ETS, through our lab testing. And so thus it created like stinky fermentations, and then you add a little bit of yeast food and they're happy, and it's fine, and it carries on and goes on. But there's, a handful of I mean, like real life issues that we see happening from, the climate change. And I mean, we had a 6 to 10 day heat spike, depending on what area of Sonoma County you were in. And it was right around ripening and harvest. I was actually going to chat about that a little bit. It's definitely a thing. And one thing that kind of ties in with Zonta, I'm also on the board of this nonprofit organization called Wine Women, and it's focused on empowering women in the wine industry. And I'm the director of programs. And one of the things that I'm in the process of putting together, I was just chatting with the winery today about hosting us, but one about, just climate change. There's this one woman who is written up in one of the wine publications called Wine Enthusiast, and talking about what she's doing in the vineyard to help combat climate change and different ways that we can be more environmentally friendly in the vineyard. So she's on board to be on the panel. And then I'm in the process now of finding people who are making strides and changes in shipping. Like, how are we decreasing our carbon footprint in shipping wine to our customers? Because, the United States is large, and I don't want to not send my wine to someone on the East Coast because of gas prices or, things of that sort. But what can we do, and how do we minimize, excess? And so I want to get someone on for that. And so I'm in the process of trying to get those conversations to happen and to see what we can do, because it would just be a shame if we couldn't get wine from Willamette Valley. And I know I have some good friends that are farmers and vineyard managers and winemakers up there, and chatting with them about the hail and the frost. Somewhere in France, they had a tornado. They called it the Storm Americano because they don't have tornadoes, but they know America does. And so it's like, oh, it's the American storm. That volcano is erupting over in Mauna Kea. Like I said, there's so much that, who can't do something, like in every industry that we're in, and how to help it in our wine industry. I'm trying to, I'm working on figuring out how we can make a difference there. But it's hard, and it's not easy. And Mother Nature, she's one of the most difficult things with the wine industry. She's so hard to partner with. She doesn't listen. Did that answer your question as much as I could? Great, thank you.
Wonderful. Well, I also took this opportunity to bring up a list of our sommelier sponsors, and you can see here, I know many of you use them. Argyle Catering, which is a wonderful, wonderful group of folks. I grew up next to them, and he does a great job with his catering. Strikers, the new bowling alley, they came in to be a great sponsor. And many of these folks that are on here listed down here are also members. We've got Central Bank, Brown Printing, they did a lot for us this time around. Ambrose Hauling and Excavating, that's Becky Ambrose. Every time she stands up and says she's retired dental hygienist and she has a hauling and excavating company, this is it right here. So these folks came out, KRCG 13 Genesis, so really appreciate that they did that, and thank you to those sponsors. All right, Maria, are you ready for the next slide?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
So that's me out in my Zinfandel vineyard. Those are 75-year-old vines. That was the day that I decided to sign the contract for this wine. So that's why I was dressed like that. That's not normal vineyard attire. I just had to run out and check it out. But so as I was chatting about with the stray dogs and how Adam and I blend our different barrels across brands. So obviously that wine is going to change every year. Well, honestly, all wine changes every year because every year is a different vintage and it's a new crop, and so things change. But regardless, that style, I guess, could change more so every year. But the idea is to always still make it a good wine. And so I loved that that this one, the OVR wine, the one that I'm drinking. Oh no, I can't drink that much. I only have one glass. I wanted to have another sip because it tastes so good. This is the one where I was saying that I know the owner and winemaker. It's the Marietta wine, and it's here in in Sonoma County. And they make a Zinfandel. And so I reached out to Scott and asked him about this. And so I'm going to read what he sent me because it's just such a fun story and an anecdote. So with this OVR, the idea, it's a non-vintage. So non-vintage meaning that you can't say that all these grapes inside this bottle came from the 2021 vintage / calendar year. Because they have more than 5% of another year's fruit in there. So you can have 94% from the 21 vintage and then 6% from the 22 vintage, and then you would have to call it a non-vintage. And so when he's talking about this, he says, I get to continue crafting this unique wine, which my father first created at the beginning of his winemaking life. It is a Zinfandel-based blend that emulates the field blends made from historic blocks of vines that often had multiple varietals planted together, which yielded more complete wines than single varietal blocks. He took inspiration from his cooking lessons with his Italian grand aunt Marietta, the name of the winery, who hated recipes. When she caught him trying to write down how to make her homemade minestrone soup, she grabbed his notebook, tore out the page, and threw it away. Incredulous, she asked him what would he do if he couldn't get onions or if his garlic was particularly flavorful, explaining that she would vary the ratios of ingredients every time she cooked based on their quality and flavor, and it was always the absolute best that it could be as a result of the variations. Similarly, the percentages of Syrah, Petit Syrah, or Barbera changed with every new lot of OVR. Ever evolving, it is always the best expression of our vineyards, our clearest interpretation of balance, and the truest example of our craft. I thought that was so fun. And it's so cool too to see how there's you know, I mean, there's a lot of wines out there. There's a lot of wines out there. And there's a lot of wines that just don't really have much personality. It's kind of like, oh, we had some fruit, we threw it in a tank, fermented it, and put it in a bottle, and you know, slapped the label on it, and now it's, you know, $5.99 at Trader Joe's. And sometimes those are really good wines. So I'm definitely not knocking that. But it's always fun when you get to see the personality behind it. You get to see the winemaker. You know, the amount of work that we put in, that I put in with my wines. So I'm here in my Zinfandel vineyard. They're 75-year-old vines, and I spent about 15 hours throughout the harvest season, just walking row by row, vine by vine, looking at each plant and saying, okay, what's going on here? How are these clusters sitting? How are they looking? Are they forming right? Is it too much? Is it, you know, is this plant struggling? And then making decisions to drop this vine and drop that. And then, you know, so I mean, we just spent all this time on the road to the vineyards and checking that, and then tasting the tanks every day. And I know that so much, you know, wine is something to enjoy with a girlfriend and some popcorn and a good movie. And I totally get it. And I do it too. But to sit and see and hear the stories behind the wines, I think are, you know, just really fun and help someone, hopefully help people appreciate the labor of love that we put in it, because, you know, dealing with Mother Nature, that's really hard, and it's hard to love it sometimes. Dealing with the state and all of the taxes and fees that we have to pay, it's hard to love it. But being out in the vineyards, I mean, you know, people always ask, what do you love more, the ocean or the mountains? And I'm like, the vineyards. That's where I'm happy. That's where it's so cool to see it every year. And I leave the vineyard and like, grow big and strong, sweet babies, keep doing it, you're doing great, you know. And so for Scott to share that story, I was really excited to share it with you, because it just gives this insight behind the wine, and it's cool that this one has a story. When this one is like it's not quite a $6 Trader Joe wine, but I think it's somewhere in the $15 range, and I got like 95 points from some wine publications. And so it's really exciting to see how he's, you know, making such a cool wine and has a fun story. And, you know, you don't feel bad opening up with Tuesday and pizza. Did anybody open up the OVR? Well, I hope you have it. Or
Yes, it's delicious.
Oh, good. Good.
It's about gone, actually.
Fantastic.
That's Tammy, not Leslie.
Well, good. I'm so happy to hear. And for those of you that didn't choose that that route or that package, know that Matt over at Bar Vino still has some. So I hope you check it out, because it's really cool. And then so I was going to chat about the harvest season, just to give you a a glimpse into. It wasn't easy, quite honestly. For me, it was much more of a learning vintage. We had frost, we had hail, we had heat, and we had no water. Thankfully, no big bugs or anything that really destroyed it, or no smoke, no fires. Hooray. But it was a difficult year, and the yields were lower. The plants had to struggle more. We had to be much more hands-on. Actually, my vineyard, the one that I'm in the photo, because of the amount of time that I spent in the vineyard versus those sourcing from the vineyard or from the blocks around me, and dropping fruit and paying attention to the vine and going and checking and making sure the vineyard management was doing what I wanted and what the vineyard needed. My block was the only one that didn't struggle, or that was the only one to get ripe this year. So I think it's, I think that's saying something. One, my vineyard style and my hands-on approach, but also just how hard this vintage was. I mean, it's usually not that difficult for Zinfandel to soar past the 25, 28 range bricks that winemakers generally pick Zinfandel in. But to see that, that vineyard struggled so hard is just another example of how this vintage was difficult. But then when I was pressing my Zinfandel juice from tank after it fermented and into barrel, I'm not gonna lie, I got a little drunk off of it. It was tasting really good. I had this big pitcher. Well, big pitcher, it was 1,000 milliliters, but I filled it up because some people were going to be coming by and I wanted to share it with them. But then they ended up not being able to, but I was already drinking straight from it. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm having a bottle of wine right now while my juice drained from tank. So I'm excited to share it with everyone once it's bottled next July, because it was tasting really fun. But yeah, Zinfandel, it's such a fun grape. I wish I had mine to share it with you, but I hope you all try the OVR when you get a chance. Any questions? Great.
All right. Well, really quickly, I'm going to go ahead and thank our final sponsors, our connoisseur sponsors. We have Mid-America Bank, News Tribune, and Promo Realty. Thank you very much to these sponsors as well. I know, I think Tammy Shute is on with us tonight. And so there's another member, and we really appreciate everybody who came out as sponsors for this event. So again, want to thank you thank these folks for being a sponsor, and let you know that we do appreciate everything that they've done for us. Okay, Lori, are you ready for us to go on to the next slide?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the last one, there were two more in another package. My Russian River. Here, this is the orange poppy. I have another that's a single vineyard that's a red poppy and a red capsule. And then the other one in this package here, it's called Beaumarchais, and it's a wine that is a collaboration between Adam Lee and Philippe Cambie. Philippe Cambie passed away at the end of last year, so unfortunately the 2021 vintage is our last vintage of Beaumarchais. But he was the king of Grenache in Châteauneuf-du-Pape, which is their main grape in that area. And he consulted for 81 different wineries around the world. He had 1,600 point wines in 2018. And he was just this bigger than life kind of personality. And so Adam and him teamed up and made a Pinot Noir, because Philippe had never made Pinot before. And he did it in a completely different style than anybody who had ever made Pinot that we had ever talked to had ever done. So that was really cool. And it's been really well received by critics and consumers alike. So it's really exciting. And if you see that at Bar Vino or around, or if you didn't get it through this package, I would encourage you to. It's such a unique style of wine But wanted to just chat with you about mine because it's me. And so this is my Russian River Valley. It was a blend from 2 different vineyards. I sourced 4 tons from my vineyard called Lakeview, but then I purchased 2 barrels from another vineyard that the custom crush production facility that makes my wine or helps me make my wine and where I make it. Where they also made that wine there. And so, so it's 6 barrels, only 150 cases, and Rob Report actually just wrote it up as one of the 12 best wines to have at Thanksgiving. And so it's been really cool and really well received. And it's exciting to have stuff in bottle and to share it with everyone. Because it just, I mean, I picked this fruit in 2021 and it wasn't until August, September of 22 when I was able to share it with people and start to sell it. So it's exciting to see it out there on shelves and in restaurants. And yeah, so I know that we're running out of time, but yeah, I just really appreciate y'all hanging out with me this evening and letting me chat with you about me and my wines and other people's wines. There's so many fun wines out there, really. I mean, I love drinking my wines, but if I had to drink my wines only for the rest of my life, I would just, I don't know, I would drink more beer or something. But yeah, so if there are any other questions, I'd love to answer them, or we could just chat if there's some kind of talk about Zonta. I'd love to chat more about Wine Women and the different things that we're doing there. And I don't know, maybe there's some way that Zonta and Wine Women can pair up somehow. I mean, the sky's the limit, I think, with finding ways to empower us. And if women are involved, we can definitely make it happen.
And so I would also just like to point out that I did already drink a full bottle of her Russian River Valley, her lovely wine, and it goes really well with all of the food at Barvino. I tested it all. It went really well with every one of their, the mushroom manchengo is really good with it. Also the second wine, remind me of the name of it.
Beaumarchais.
Beaumarchais. That was
Yeah.
really good. I know I had a bottle of that, part of that today as well. So they're very good. If you guys did not have the opportunity to purchase that package, Matt does have those at Barvino. And so I really encourage you guys to go there and grab a bottle of each one of those because they were very good, in my opinion. And I think there were a few women who had some drinks with me over the past couple of days who would agree with that. So, but really appreciate you coming in and presenting to us such wonderful knowledge. We really appreciate it. Are there any questions? And I know everybody's probably curious how we're going to get that information about her stray dog and stray cat. So I'll send that out to the membership and to everyone who participated in this event, and also send out a recording so that if you heard something and you want to go back and listen to it again, you can do so. So I will send out the recording on this. But do we have any questions? I know we've got several folks out there enjoying their wine and charcuterie.
What wines did y'all open up? Yeah, Tammy or Lisa?
Leslie.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have a question. So I was just in France a couple weeks ago, and when we were doing some of the tours of the vineyards and the chateaus, they basically said in France you're not able to irrigate your vineyards. Like it's illegal.
Yeah, they have a lot of different rules that we don't follow here or that we don't do here. It's not a law. We can't irrigate, but yeah, and the other thing too is, I mean, they can't use water for frost protection. So last year there was a lot of frost, and they have these like not like smudging pots, but these like little pots that they light, and then they hope that they provide warmth to the vines. But they, kind of just, it's like a little space heater, and it's not close enough, and there's not enough pots to keep the space warm. So, but those are their laws. They're just, no, this is what they did 500 years ago, and what we said you couldn't do. And, but yeah, and so it's surprising, but the French, there are things they do that they don't allow, that I wish we didn't. Like, there are people who have like additives and stuff in their wine, and mega purple and grape concentrate and things of that sort. And France doesn't allow it. And so, and I think that's good, but if you want to, add mega purple in your wine, it's America. So you can do that. But yeah, it is interesting how there's those differences, and you would think that, as the climate change continues to happen, you would think that they would budge on some of those regulations, but I haven't heard anything about changes from any of my friends out there. But yeah, it is surprising.
And the other thing we noticed, there's so much rock, like there's more rock than dirt.
Yeah. Were you over in Chateauneuf?
We started off in Bordeaux and went to Cadillac in that area.
Cool. Yeah, Chateauneuf, I was there this year, and gosh, it's so rocky. It's beautiful how rocky it is. It's shocking that there's a vine that can grow, that there's a plant of, life that can grow in something that rocky. And that kind of goes back to Sherry's question about the New Zealand, and it's the soil, it's the stuff, that the nutrients that the plant is taking in, that's going to change the flavors that get absorbed and created through the skins and the juice. So that's why it's just so fun to try all these different Sauvignon Blanc, Sancerre, New Zealand, Russian River, and they can all still be so different. Actually, there's one winery, I can get the info to Emily because I'm blanking on the name right now, but they take the same vineyard of Sauvignon Blanc and then they put it in like amphora tanks. So it's kind of like this clay vessel. They put it in stainless steel tanks, they put it in oak, and they do everything the same. It's just the treatment after the fruit came in that's different. And then you get a taste how that makes a difference. So lots of fun things that so many people are doing. And then, you throw in terroir and varietal and clones, and, they're just all so different. It's really exciting. It's an exciting industry. It's not all the same.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you went out there. It's a fun space.
Any other questions?
So I have a question. I have route stock, Napa Valley, Cabernet Sauvignon. But I was just, with some of the wines you've talked about, you mentioned, what pairs well with them. And so like with your Pinot Noir, do you have, I think I know, but, I think wine goes with whatever you want it to go with most of the time, but
Yeah,
maybe there's
if
some,
you try hard enough and drink long enough, you'll like it.
But anyway, do you have any things that in your professional experience, you're like, oh, this is the best thing, or these are the two things that pair best with these wines?
Yeah. So I'm sorry I didn't talk about the Cabernet. But with my Pinot, gosh, it is a bigger wine, especially since it's young. So it's 21. But I think that like short ribs, would go really well with it. I actually had this, it was delicious. This is the answer. This butternut squash soup. And it had these, the butternut squash had, these flavors of, like cardamom and brown sugar and cinnamon. And it was just so cool how it played with. And then because the soup also had that cream, and so it had a creaminess that just, it was beautiful. I just wanted to put it together or something. Yeah, it It was
I
so
would have
good.
done
I would
that.
recommend that. But you know, it does have the ability because it's a bigger wine. It has a 60% new oak, so it has some good tannic structure. It can pair well with bigger meats too. I wouldn't do any of the ribeyes or prime rib or you know the typical Cabernet pairs.
Mhm.
But I also think there's a really nice finesse about it. If you have a bigger sauce to go with, you know, some chicken in this, I think that would go well. Yeah, but the spices were really meshing well with that soup that day. It was really delicious. I'm thinking about it again and when can I go back?
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So what's your opinion on the glass? Because Leslie was laughing at me. I have the Riedel red that's like a fishbowl, right? I'm sold that the glass makes a difference, but I'm just curious on what your opinion is.
Yeah, I agree. I had this for my Sancerre and this for my my Zinfandel, and I thought I was gonna get to my Pinot, but I wanted to keep drinking the OVR. And I did this one tasting with the Riedel rep, and we had the wine in one of those plastic airplane cups, and it was the same wine you saw it come out from the bottle, and then they put it in like their 4 different types of glasses, like the lineup. They put it in the champagne, they put it in the goblet, the Cabernet, and then you know like the little dessert wines. And I think that the glasses were power of persuasion, that you know because we did different varietals and said Cabernet in the Cabernet glass, Pinot in the bulb, you know, and I think that could work for sure, but the one thing that didn't was that airplane cup. So I think the biggest thing with that is to just make sure it's glass. That's where it's really gonna make the difference. And I don't understand the science of it. But it's like just something gets stuck in the plastic that just doesn't come out of the glass and into your mouth. And so yeah, that would be my biggest encouragement. But like I said, in that tasting, I did feel as if you know the Cabernet glass did suit it. Obviously with the champagne glass and that tiny little you know flute, that doesn't you know work except for champagne. But as far as the reds go, I would just encourage glass. But that's a good question. I did think about mentioning that earlier, so I'm glad you brought that up.
And
Just word to the wise, if you try to wash it, be very gentle.
Yeah.
My husband broke one and I was griping, and I'll be damned if the next day I didn't break one. So
Yeah.
no soap and a very gentle touch.
Yeah. Adam, my fiance, he isn't allowed to wash glasses anymore because his hands are just too big, and so then he's you know just doing like this much. I'm like, what is this? You didn't even get like, no, just don't, you know, he can't fold clothes, he can't wash dishes, wash glasses. I think he's onto something, but you know, it's like, no, those shirts aren't folded. That's, you know, it's a bundle. Like, what do you, that's not a thing. Why do you think that works? Yeah, he tries, but he fails. Sherry, did you have another question?
Well, I was just gonna see if you agreed with a general statement, like a bowl, a nice bowl for a red, whether it's Pinot or Cabernet is good. But I like a bigger bowl for my Sauvignon Blanc, not, you know, more upright, not the little ones. Like some places you go, you get a little one and I'm like, I want a bigger one. But I think, you know, generally speaking, right, if you have, because I don't have like the exact right wine glass for the cab and the exact right one, but I think anything with a nice bowl is good for red. But I wondered if you would agree with that.
I do. Yeah, I do. A good bowl. I mean, you want it to be able to, I mean, the idea of the bowl and the reasoning is just so the wine gets more oxygen into it and then allows it to open up. And so if you know, try to take a champagne flute and swirl it around, you know, it's going to spill out and it just doesn't work. So a big bowl is, you know, the idea to help it, because what you're trying to do is drink wine to show the wine the best. right? I mean, that's for the glassware and the reasoning behind it. So, yeah, being able to set it up for success, allows it to get that air and to get some circulation. I mean, it's been trapped in that bottle for, 2 years, 10 years, 5 years, so I think that that's one of the reasons why it's so important for having a big bowl so you can get some air into it and just let it out. It's been trapped. Yeah.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions for Murray? I think it's amazing how much you know and how much you've done, and you look like you're 24.
Well, thank you. Sunblock, I'm 36.
Oh, wow. I wouldn't have thought that, no.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's been quite the journey, I mean, my time at Hall was huge and taught me a lot. Costa Brown and those guys in production, Adam and everything with him, and being a small team and doing everything. It's a lot of fun, and it's such a fun place to do it in. Sonoma County, Napa Valley is, if you like wine, there are times people move here and I'm like, oh, so do you like wine? And they're like, no. I'm like, I don't know what you're supposed to do then. Like, do you hike? No. Shoot. We have a movie theater. Like, do you like the movies? So yeah, it's a lovely valley, both of them, Sonoma County and Napa Valley, and it's really fun to be here. And I'm excited for Marie-Brelin and how things have been received and kind of what happens next. I'd love to make a Cabernet. I have to figure out where and how to make a Cabernet, but yeah, I just I'm excited for all things. It's fun. Happy to share it with everyone.
Well, we really appreciate it. And I know you said you're going to be traveling into St. Louis and Kansas City at some point. If you don't have the dates with you now, I would love for you to share that with me so I can share that with our membership and with others so that we can come out and see you. I know a lot of us make the trip to St. Louis and Kansas City all the time, regardless of the 2 hours to get there. So we'd love to hear more about that and really appreciate the fact that you're willing to do the month of December for your stray dog and stray cats. And hold those up again, if you don't mind. I don't know if everybody could see you holding up your bottles, or hold one up.
Yeah. So this here is my stray dogs, and then this is my Russian River. So you'll see the color block with an animal or the poppy. Although I'm not sure what I'm going to do with my Zinfandel yet, but I don't know, no time to decide, like 3 months, but that'll be here next week. So, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The dates for the Missouri trip, it's like February 20th, like that week. And it's Kansas City for 2 days and then St. Louis for a few after. Yeah, Monday through Friday kind of trip. And so we definitely plan on doing some consumer events, whether it's a dinner or a tasting. Yeah, because I mean, there's so many fun places out there. It's funny, people, we're like, oh, we're going to Missouri. We go every year, and they're like, Missouri, and we're like, people out there like wine, and we go where people want to buy wine, and it's actually fun. Like, we had a great time. Well, it was my first trip earlier this year, but I had a great time, and Adam's been going every year, and he loves it too. So it's been good for us. We like Missouri. We just wish we went in a better month, but February, March is kind of like our good time to travel. Yeah, so that's why I said I golfed a warm 40. Yeah, I wish it was a 40 score, but no, it's just a warm 40 degrees.
All right. Are there any other questions, ladies? It doesn't look like I'm hearing or seeing anything. So I know I represent Zonta, and on behalf of everyone attending, that we really thank you, appreciate you joining us. And I think you did an amazing job. A lot of knowledge and information. Appreciate you putting together that presentation, and the recording. We'll send that out to everybody who couldn't make it and everybody who did make it, so they can go back on there. So really appreciate that. And I guess we'll let everybody have the rest of their evening to enjoy their wine and their charcuterie. And if you liked what you had, as she had mentioned several times, I know Matt has several of these wines at Barvinos that you can go get some more or go try Moray's wine that if you didn't purchase it through the packages. So really want to support her and appreciate the fact that she took the time out to do this for us. So thank you again. And I hope everybody has a wonderful night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.